Remember Birds of a Feather? The show that made millions laugh in the 80s and 90s. But behind the jokes of Birds of a Feather, the cast faced heartbreak that no one ever saw coming. Some of them died too young, others lost everything before their final days. What really happened to the stars who once made us smile? Let's find out. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. John Barden as Less and Less Stubbs. Do you remember that warm, cheeky smile of Les Stubbs? That was John Barden, the man who could turn a single line into a moment of pure heart. In Birds of a Feather, he was the lovable dad everyone wished they had. But away from the cameras, John's story was filled with quiet pain, fierce determination, and an ending that broke even his co-stars' hearts. Before fame, John wasn't on TV. He was driving shuttles at Heathrow Airport, dreaming of one lucky break. It didn't come until he was 31, when he finally stepped onto a stage in Exeter. From there, he fought his way through rejection and tiny roles until EastEnders made him a national treasure. But success came late, and so did tragedy. In 2007, a massive stroke silenced the man whose humor had filled British living rooms. For months, he couldn't move or speak, yet he fought his way back, appearing one last time to say goodbye to Dot Cotton. The strength it took for him to smile through pain made his return unforgettable. John Barden was 52 when he played Les Stubbs. He passed away on September 12, 2014, at age 75 after suffering a third stroke. His net worth was around $1 million, but the legacy he left, that of laughter, resilience, and quiet grace, was priceless. Peter Vaughn as Monty. Peter Vaughn brought Monty to life, a retired ex-con with sharp instincts and a soft heart buried under years of bitterness. He offered the sisters a dose of streetwise wisdom, a reminder that the world outside Chigwell wasn't as gentle as it seemed. But behind that calm voice and knowing smile, there was something raw, a man who'd seen too much and felt too little kindness. Peter started small, nameless policeman, blink and you'll miss it cameos, and years of rejection that nearly broke him. He worked endlessly, chasing roles that barely paid the rent. Then came Porridge, and suddenly, everyone knew his face. But fame was never kind. Casting directors saw him as the eternal villain, and Peter fought hard to escape the box that brought him success. His private life had its share of heartache too. His marriage to actress Billie Whitelaw ended in silence, leaving behind regret he carried for years. As age crept in, illness followed, fading eyesight, fragile health, yet he never stopped. From The Remains of the Day to Game of Thrones, his performances grew gentler, wiser, like a man making peace with the world that once overlooked him. Peter Vaughn played Monty in Birds of a Feather at age 66. He passed away on December 6, 2016, in Surrey at 93 from natural causes. His estimated net worth was $3 million, but what remains is far greater. The quiet strength of a man who proved that power doesn't need to roar to be unforgettable. George Wendt as himself. Every generation has its face of comfort, and for millions, that was George Wendt. The lovable Norm from Cheers once guest appeared on Birds of a Feather, bringing the same easy warmth that made him television's favorite bar regular. But behind the laughter was a quiet battle no one saw coming. George started from nothing, literally sweeping floors at Chicago's Second City before anyone handed him a script. His rise through Cheers was lightning fast, turning him into a household name and 6-time Emmy nominee. Yet fame's glow faded quickly. Typecast, heavier and tired, he faced constant health scares from heart disease and diabetes while clinging to the stage he loved most. Through the 2000s and 2010s, he kept working, Broadway, sitcoms, Christmas specials, refusing to slow down. But by his 70s, the toll became too great. Years of overwork, touring, and untreated cardiac strain left him fragile. Still, he kept his humor intact, even joking on The Masked Singer in 2023. A final wink to fans who'd grown up shouting, "Norm!" George Wendt appeared on Birds of a Feather as himself at age 27. He died peacefully in his sleep on May 20th, 2025, in Los Angeles, aged 76, from cardiac arrest brought on by heart failure. His net worth was $2 million. Bernard Holly as Richard Summers. Bernard Holly never needed grand entrances or flashy lines. He could break your heart with just a look. As Richard Summers, the older lover of Dorian Green, he played tenderness with a weight that only comes from experience. Every scene felt like a confession, and in many ways it was. In the 1960s, Bernard was everywhere. As PC Newcomb in Z-Cars, he became a national name. 500 episodes, millions of viewers. But fame faded fast. When the show ended, so did the phone calls. Casting agents saw only a policeman, not an actor. Overnight, he went from star to stranger, forced to teach drama just to keep the lights on. He took small roles. Doctor Who, The Gentle Touch, Please Sir, anything that paid. Each performance chipped away at the loneliness of being forgotten. Once he said, "People used to know me on the street. Now they just walk by." It was said softly, without anger, but with a sadness that lingers even now. Then came Birds of a Feather. As Richard, he was vulnerable again. No badge, no mask, just a man trying to love. For Bernard, it was a gentle redemption. Even when illness came, prostate cancer in his 70s, he kept working, finding strength in the only place he ever truly belonged, the stage. Bernard Holly played Richard Summers from 1996 to 1998. He passed away on November 22, 2021, aged 81. His fortune was modest, about £1.5 million or $1.9 million, but his soul was rich beyond measure. Pauline Quirk as Sharon Theodopolopoulos. Sharon Theodopolopoulos was the loud one, the funny one, the kind of woman who laughed through her pain and loved without filters. Pauline Quirk brought her to life with raw honesty, turning everyday chaos into warmth and laughter that never felt scripted. But behind that laughter was a woman who had been fighting her whole life. Pauline started acting as a child, often told she wasn't glamorous enough for television. Between The Elephant Man and Shine on Harvey Moon, she faced years of rejection and exhaustion, working odd jobs just to survive. For every line she delivered on screen, there were nights she went home wondering if the dream was worth the pain. Then Birds of a Feather changed everything. Overnight, she became one of Britain's most loved actresses. Yet fame brought its own shadows, self-doubt, anxiety, and cruel headlines about her weight. When the cameras stopped rolling, the silence was deafening. She once said the audience's laughter was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. In 2021, her world grew smaller. Pauline was diagnosed with early-onset dementia at just 61. Her husband revealed that she sometimes watched old episodes of Birds of a Feather without realizing she was in them. The woman who gave laughter to millions was slowly losing her own memories. Pauline Quirk played Sharon Theodopolopoulos when she was 30. Now, at 66, she lives quietly with her family, retired from public life. Her net worth, around £4 million or $5.2 million, is less a measure of money than of legacy. Her laughter still echoes where her memory fades. Lesley Joseph as Dorian Green. Lesley Joseph made Dorian Green unforgettable, bold, funny, and always a little tragic beneath the sparkle. Every time she stepped on screen in leopard print and high heels, you could sense a woman fighting to stay seen, to stay wanted, to stay alive in a world that forgets women far too easily. Her journey began on stage. chasing auditions that rarely paid enough to eat. She acted in A Midsummer Night's Dream and Piaf, but for years the doors stayed closed. By the time Birds of a Feather came in 1989, she was 44 and ready for her moment. It finally came, but fame arrived late, and with it came pressure to never grow old. After the show ended, the rejections started again. Casting directors called her too old, as if success had an expiration date. At home, her marriage ended, and the loneliness deepened. Years of crash diets for Dorian's slim image left her bones fragile. Osteoporosis turned every step into pain. Still, she smiled for the cameras, hiding the ache behind her quick wit. Even as time tested her, Lesley fought back. At 70, she joined Strictly Come Dancing, proving age couldn't touch her spirit. Through lockdowns, illness, and loss, she never stopped working, finding new life in Sister Act and the Addams Family, still dancing, still laughing, still defying gravity. Lesley Joseph played Dorian Green in Birds of a Feather when she was 44 years old. In 2025, at 80, she's still performing with fire in her eyes. Her net worth, around $3 million, hardly tells her story, because what she's really earned is something far rarer: respect, resilience, and the right to never fade. Linda Robson as Tracy Stubbs. Linda Robson didn't just play Tracy Stubbs, she was Tracy. Honest, loyal, and quietly breaking inside, she carried the heart of Birds of a Feather. Every laugh, every sigh felt real because she'd lived it herself. Her climb was steep. Growing up in Islington, she started acting at 14, in The Likely Lads and Shine on Harvey Moon. Success took decades, and when it came with pressure. Between filming, bills, and motherhood, she barely slept. The fame she'd dreamed of came wrapped in exhaustion and fear of losing it all. After her first marriage collapsed, Linda turned to alcohol to numb the pain. Years later, she checked into rehab, admitting she was tired of pretending. Her openness about addiction and mental health later made her a voice of truth on Loose Women. The same honesty that once made her vulnerable became her strength. Loss never stopped knocking. Her parents passed, her finances crumbled, and in 2023, a 33-year marriage ended. But when life silenced her, she found her way back through words. Her 2024 memoir, Truth Be Told, gave her pain a purpose, helping others face their own. Linda Robson played Tracy Stubbs in Birds of a Feather when she was 31 years old. Now, at 67, she still appears on Loose Women, stronger for every scar. Her net worth, about $10 million, means little compared to what she's gained: peace, courage, and a kind of wisdom that only heartbreak can teach. Ray Winstone as Malcolm. Ray Winstone didn't just act tough, he was tough. When he appeared in Birds of a Feather as Malcolm, Dorian's rugged ex-lover, he brought the same raw magnetism that would later define his entire career. But behind that swagger was a man shaped by pain, loss, and a lifetime of fighting battles few ever saw. Ray started in the boxing ring long before he ever faced a camera. By 12, he was a champion. By 18, he was broken. Years of head injuries forced him out of the sport, leaving him adrift and angry. Acting saved him. Barely. His first real breakthrough came with Scum in 1979, a brutal role that mirrored his own rage and resilience. But fame didn't come easy. He went bankrupt in the mid-80s, his dreams collapsing along with a failed pub business. When Nil by Mouth, 1997, and Sexy Beast, 2000, arrived, the world finally noticed. Critics called him the soul of British toughness, but that image came at a cost. His daughter Lois was diagnosed with severe autism in 1990, and his father died of cancer 20 years later. Ray coped the only way he knew how, with alcohol, sinking deeper until pain became part of his routine. By 2020, old injuries caught up with him. Surgery, rehab, and long months away from film sets followed. Yet somehow he always came back. From The Departed to The Gentleman, his presence remained magnetic. Ray Winstone played Malcolm in Birds of a Feather when he was 32 years old. In 2025, at 68, he continues acting and supporting autism charities in Essex. His net worth, around $5 million, is modest for a man of his fame. Alan Lewis as Daryl Stubbs. Alan Lewis brought Daryl Stubbs to life, the well-meaning but foolish husband who turned Tracy's quiet world upside down. Behind the humor of a bumbling builder and part-time bank robber, there was something strangely tragic, a mirror of the actor's own struggles beneath the surface. Alan's story was never glamorous. He started with promise in Eustace and Hilda, 1977, but the roles that followed came slowly, painfully. When Birds of a Feather arrived, it should have been his breakthrough. Instead, it became his prison. Audiences loved Daryl, but the industry branded him as the crooked husband, and soon, no one saw Alan as anything else. The typecasting destroyed him. After his marriage ended in 1990, he fell into depression, quietly disappearing from the spotlight. Emmerdale gave him a second wind in the 90s, but even that success couldn't fill the silence that followed when work stopped coming. In 2010, a heart condition forced him to retire completely. His body, like his spirit, had grown tired. Away from the cameras, grief kept chasing him. His father's death in a workplace accident haunted him for decades. Writing became his escape, a way to make sense of everything he'd lost. He didn't crave fame anymore, only peace. Alan Lewis played Daryl Stubbs in Birds of a Feather when he was 40 years old. In 2025, at 76, he lives quietly in Wales, writing plays that few may ever see. His net worth is around £1 million, $1.3 million. His story isn't of fame, but of fading, and learning to live with that silence. Peter Polycarpu as Chris Theodopolopoulos. Peter Polycarpu made Chris Theodopolopoulos unforgettable, lazy, self-pitying, and hopelessly funny, the kind of man you can't stand but somehow still feel sorry for. Beneath the laughs, Peter gave the role a quiet sadness that came from somewhere very real. His life was a battle between art and pain. Born to Cypriot parents, he fought his way onto the West End stage in Cats, 1981, and Miss Saigon. Success should have set him free, but fate had other plans. In 2000, a serious vocal injury nearly ended his career. The voice that had carried him across continents was gone overnight. For months, he couldn't even sing to himself. Then came the losses no stage could prepare him for. His divorce in 1985 and his mother's death from cancer 10 years later. The man who had once filled theaters now struggled with silence, both literal and emotional. Yet he never stopped. When he couldn't perform, he taught. When he couldn't sing, he wrote. Each step forward was a small act of defiance. His later years brought redemption. He earned an Olivier nomination for Oslo, and his deep, weathered presence in Les Miserables and Sweeney Todd reminded audiences why they loved him in the first place. Pain had become his teacher, and his art was stronger for it. Peter Polycarpu played Chris Theodopolopoulos in Birds of a Feather when he was 33 years old. In 2025, at 68, he teaches voice and theater in London, his net worth around $2 million. For Peter, survival itself became the masterpiece, one built on resilience, loss, and the courage to keep creating after the music stops. Eamonn Walker as Colin. You could always feel the fire in Eamonn Walker's eyes, even when he was just Colin, Dorian's smooth-talking friend. He wasn't on screen long, but there was something magnetic, something that hinted this man was destined for much more. But destiny for Eamonn was never easy. In 1980s London, being a black actor meant fighting a system that didn't see you. He took whatever roles he could, from The Bill to In Sickness and In Health, never out of pride, but persistence. He learned early, talent wasn't enough. You had to survive rejection 1,000 times and still show up smiling. Everything changed with Oz, 1997. His portrayal of Kareem Saeed shook American television. Proud, disciplined, human. It made him a star, but it also cost him. The emotional intensity left him drained. The distance from home left him lonely. And just when life steadied, a severe back injury in 2018 reminded him how fragile even strength can be. He could have retired. Instead, he reinvented himself. From Chicago Fire to Broadway, finding meaning in every scar. "Pain teaches you who you are," he once said. And maybe that's why his performances still burn so bright. They come from somewhere deeply lived. Eamonn Walker played Colin in Birds of a Feather when he was 27 years old. In 2025, at 63, he lives in Los Angeles with his wife and 3 children. His net worth is around $6 million. But the real legacy isn't in money. It's in every soul he's moved by simply being honest. Stephen Marcus as Dave. You could never forget Dave, Sharon's cheeky, big-hearted boyfriend who always seemed one drink away from trouble. Stephen Marcus played him with the warmth of a man you knew, the kind who laughs too loud and loves too hard. His presence made those few episodes feel alive. But behind the laughter, Stephen's real life wasn't all smiles. He started out performing in parks, barely scraping by, until My Beautiful Laundrette, 1985, gave him his first break. For years, he hustled through auditions, commercials, anything to keep the lights on. Then came Lock, Stock, and 2 Smoking Barrels, and with it, fame. But fame has a cruel sense of humor. At the height of his success, gambling became his escape. By 2000, addiction had swallowed almost everything he'd earned. He came dangerously close to losing his home, his friends, even his will to act. It took years of therapy, debt, and humility to rebuild. When he finally returned to film sets, in Snatch, Kinky Boots, and The Greatest Game Ever Played, there was a softness in him that hadn't been there before. Stephen turned his pain into purpose. In later years, he ran film tours around London, sharing stories of the city that both broke and saved him. He joked about his mistakes, but you could hear the lessons in every laugh, the kind that only comes from nearly losing everything. Stephen Marcus played Dave in Birds of a Feather when he was 29 years old. In 2025, at 65, he continues acting in independent films and TV. His net worth is around $2 million. Behind the gangster grin, he remains proof that redemption is possible, even after the odds are stacked against you. Vivien Pickles as Aunt Sylvie. There was something magical about Vivien Pickles, the way she could turn a single line into an entire memory. As Aunt Sylvie in Birds of a Feather, she was sharp, eccentric, and quietly wise, the kind of woman who could scold you and comfort you in the same breath. Vivien's career began when most children were still playing with dolls. By 13, she was already a star on BBC's Alice in Wonderland. Fame came early, and so did exhaustion. The theater loved her, Hollywood admired her, especially after Isadora Duncan, The Biggest Dancer in the World, 1966, and Harold and Maude, 1971. But fame never loved her back. She gave decades to her craft, only to find the offers fading as she grew older. When age crept in, the cameras stopped calling. Her husband, actor Gordon Gostelow, was her anchor, until his death in 2007. After that, Vivien disappeared from the spotlight completely. The woman who once played queens and dreamers now spent her days alone, surrounded by memories of a world that had moved on without her. Yet even in solitude, there was grace. She turned to writing, reflecting on her years with Ken Russell and Hal Ashby. "I've had my time," she once said quietly. "Now, I just listen." It wasn't sadness in her voice. It was acceptance. Vivien Pickles played Aunt Sylvie in Birds of a Feather when she was 58 years old. In 2025, at 94, she lives privately in England. Her net worth is about $1 million, but her real legacy isn't measured in money. It's in the hundreds of characters she brought to life, each one touched by her unmistakable spirit. Matthew Savage as Garth Stubbs. It's strange how fast the world can forget a child star. Matthew Savage was just 17 when he became Garth Stubbs, Tracy's kind, awkward teenage son, trying to make sense of a family that never stopped fighting. His face was on TV screens every week, but behind that smile was a boy who never felt ready for fame. When Birds of a Feather ended, Matthew did what few expected. He walked away from acting. The pressure, the comparisons, the fear of never escaping Garth's shadow, it was too much. Music became his refuge. He joined small bands, wrote songs about heartbreak and hope, and poured his soul into sound. But the road wasn't kind. His band collapsed in 2000 after years of struggle, and with it, his confidence. A painful divorce in 2010 left him adrift once more. Friends say he kept playing in pubs, often alone, just a man with a keyboard and a lifetime of quiet memories. "I never stopped performing," he once said. "I just changed the stage." There's something haunting in that. The idea that the boy who once made millions laugh now plays to strangers who don't know who he was. But maybe that's how he found peace. Matthew Savage played Garth Stubbs in Birds of a Feather when he was 17 years old. In 2025, at 53, he still performs as a keyboardist in small folk bands around Brighton. His net worth is estimated at $700,000. Modest, but earned with honesty, not applause. Gordon Warnecke as Ranjith Gupta. When Gordon Warnecke appeared as Ranjith in Birds of a Feather, it was just a short role. But by then, he'd already made history. 4 years earlier, he'd starred in My Beautiful Laundrette, 1985, a film that shocked Britain by portraying a gay romance between a Pakistani boy and a white punk in the middle of Thatcher's England. Gordon was that boy. It was brave, it was brilliant, and it came at a terrible cost. The very role that should have launched his career instead marked him. Casting directors praised his performance but quietly turned away, uncomfortable with what it represented. Opportunities dried up, not because of talent, but because of prejudice. He turned to theater, pouring himself into the Royal Shakespeare Company, teaching, mentoring, anything that would keep him close to the craft he loved. By 2000, tired of waiting for roles that never came, he quietly stepped away from acting. But he never stopped creating. He began writing, directing, and helping young performers find the courage he once needed. Gordon Warnecke played Ranjith in Birds of a Feather when he was 27 years old. In 2025, at 63, he lives in North London, teaching theater and mentoring students. His net worth is around $1 million, but his legacy is far richer. He opened doors for others, even when the world tried to close them on him. So many laughs once filled our screens, and now only silence remains. Which actor's story shocked you the most? Leave a comment below, and join us as we remember more stars gone too soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.